Welcome to another video, Purple Political Talk here. Today is Wednesday, June 16th, 2021, and today we're going to be discussing another 2024 presidential election prediction, this time between, I would say, two of the most unpopular politicians nationwide. We have former President Donald Trump for the Republicans and Vice President Kamala Harris for the Democrats. So before we get started with this prediction, I wanted to remind you guys to please like, subscribe, and turn on post notifications to be up to date with our latest content. And I also wanted to remind you guys that next June 22nd, I will be going live for the New York City mayoral race. So make sure that you guys do not miss that. So now that we have gotten that out of the way, let's get started. So this race is actually very interesting. And while I fill in the safe states, I'm going to tell you why I think that. At this point in time, Kamala Harris and Donald Trump are certainly not one of the most popular. Within their bases, they're very popular. They have their bases, they have their supporters, like any politician does. However, I think that one of the big things with these two candidates is that, especially when it comes to independent supporters, especially for Trump over the last couple of months, the side effect of the end of his presidency, a lot of independents have stopped supporting Trump. Now, a lot of the things that are turning down Trump as a politician have made him a lot less popular over the last months. Realistically, it's all been because of the riots at the U.S. Capitol. And also, generally speaking, he doesn't really have a place where he can go out and, preach his platform because of the bans he has on social media where he really can't post anywhere. Those are the big challenges facing Trump. While for Harris, it's more of natural unpopularity, even amongst members of her own party. Kamala Harris, I would say, and I made a video about this yesterday. If you haven't checked that out, I recommend you do. That Kamala Harris is really unpopular right now because of many different things. And come 2024, she is the natural successor of Biden if Biden chooses not to run, which at this point in time, it's looking like he will run. When we were in the campaign trail and we saw, Biden going out and, talking to a lot of voters and, doing the campaign, it really seemed like he was just in it for one time. However, I think that the tide has certainly changed and Biden looks like he will run for re-election. However, Harris, in case that Biden does not, is the favorite. Now, this could be one of those scenarios where you had someone that was extremely popular, like a Hillary Clinton, Barack Obama scenario in 2008. Kamala Harris could be the second Hillary Clinton. She thought that she had everything in a row, but when it comes to the primaries, a more popular, more enthusiastic candidate might come out and beat Harris. So, as of right now, this is what I would say are the safe states. These are the states that I believe would go by to each party by more than 15 points. These are states that are pretty self-explanatory, and for the most part, the same swing states from the 2020 election, with the exception of Alaska, are going to be there. And there's really no more additions or subtractions to this list, except maybe the state of New Mexico. But I think all of this is pretty self-explanatory. So now that we have the safe states, let's move on to our toss-up states, or states that I believe will go to either candidate by less than 15 points. Let's start off with the likely states for Kamala Harris. Between 5 and 15%, I think these states will go. So for Kamala Harris, I think that one of the big things that she does have is she can appeal to the, establishment Democratic base. Pretty much, she is like a Hillary Clinton. And I think, looking at the grand scheme of things, she is the next Hillary Clinton. She is a great comparison to Hillary Clinton because she's popular amongst her base. She's popular amongst certain groups of voters, but it might not be enough. Her general unpopularity might really come to hinder her. So I think that's what we're looking at there. So we can see that maybe she's going to do strongly in Virginia and New Hampshire. I think that's as far as she goes. 5 to 15%, again, it's a big range. However, I think that Kamala Harris, a lot of her more victories in swing states are going to be considerably a lot smaller, and they're going to be in states that Democrats should be, expanded their leads. And I think that, especially with, especially with a lot of the things going on in different demographic changes. And again, you have to remember that this is a brand new map. this region up here has lost a lot of votes, and the Sun Belt has gained a lot more. So the Democrats theoretically should be doing very well here, but I think Kamala Harris is not going to do that. So this is where I think she stands for the likely states, while Trump, I think, is going to have a very good amount of likely states. He's going to do great in Alaska, traditionally conservative state, with a lot more liberal candidates. I think that Harris is not going to be the type of candidate to, push Democrats in Alaska, and I think anyways, Democrats are really not going to try to contest that because it's so far away. As far as other states go, I think Texas, Florida, Ohio, Iowa, and I think at this point that's where we're looking at. These are the states I think Donald Trump's going to do very well in. In Texas, I think that one of the things that you have to notice is that maybe there's been a lot of population growth for Democrats throughout the pandemic. People have reshifted around, and Texas has been a very popular place to move. Regardless of that, I think that Trump and his base are going to be way more popular than Harris and her base in the state of Texas. You also have to think that these campaigns are more of a nationwide thing, but usually the face of the campaign is going to be the more important part. Even if you have surrogates, only in certain very niche scenarios, you're going to have a surrogate really come out and change the whole tide of the election. I think one of the good examples of those niche examples was Jim Clyburn in the state of South Carolina for Biden. But generally speaking, like in Texas, I don't think the direct change is going to be felt. And I think Texas is a state that's more Republican than people think. Of course, there's always a possibility of it going blue with a very specific candidate, but I don't think Kamala Harris is that candidate. As far as Iowa and Ohio go, these are states that have been considerably more Republican, and I think it simply falls down to the fact that Republicans are doing great with rural vote. They're, taking it by the masses. And the Democrats have really failed to go back and go to those populations that really gave them the victory back in 2008. So I really think that if the Democrats could put a little bit more effort and run the right candidate for the presidential race, they could take these states. But again, in the big scheme of things, it's not really a big deal for the Democrats. They have many other pathways to victories. But, for the Democrats, it's going to be dangerous if they start losing these states, and then they're going to have to solely focus on some more swing states. For the Democrats, one of the things that has been very good for them in recent years and recent elections has been that they don't have to win as many swing states to win the election. But when they do lose elections, it's because they can't win in the swing states. So I think that's something that's very interesting and something that we must note. And, the trends in Iowa and Ohio are certainly not good for that. They're going to have to rely more on certain swing states like the Republicans currently do. And finally, we have the state of Florida in the likely column. And, Florida is my home state. And I really think that a lot of the population moving here is happy with the Republican Party, along with the Floridians that have been here forever. Floridians right now are very happy with the Republican Party thanks to Ron DeSantis. And just looking back at the past elections, we can see that there is a clear thing. Floridians, especially Hispanics, which were a key group for Democrats back in 2008, 2012, they're moving away from Democrats. Why? Because the Democrats are being branded as the Socialist Party. And while this may be true or not, and I really think it's a little bit more of an exaggeration, I don't think Democrats are really socialist, like hardcore, like Republicans are really marketing them down in Florida. The political marketing is working, and I think at a political level, the Republicans in Florida are geniuses, and I think they're going to have a monopoly on this state in anywhere from 2024, 2028, where they're going to control elections from here on out. And this is going to be, again, this is going to be the Republican type of Colorado or Virginia, where this was a swing state, but then little by little, it's going to end up trending opposite ways. So these are the likely states for both candidates. And now I want to move on to the lean states. These are states that are going to be closer. They're going to be less than 5%. However, they're not going to be those states that are going to be completely, the nail biters you're going to be waiting for on election night. So let's start off with the ones for Kamala Harris. At this point, I think Kamala Harris could do very well in the state of Minnesota. And I think she's going to do well in Nevada, and she's going to do well in Colorado. So these states are interesting because these are states that traditionally you could say, well, these are states that are going to end up going for someone like Harris by a big amount. But I beg to differ in these states. So in Nevada, I think that Harris doesn't. She's gonna struggle with some of the things that Hillary Clinton did here. I don't think she really can appeal to Hispanic voters, and Donald Trump has, a somewhat good appeal to them. And just looking back at 2020, I think that Donald Trump did decently well here, comparatively of where he was expected to, and then where we thought Trump was going to perform. I think generally speaking, Nevada is a state that the Republicans could certainly contest in the future, but it's a traditionally solid Democratic state as of now. So I think that Kamala Harris will do very well there. As far as the state of Colorado goes, this is a state that I really considered putting into the likely column, and what I think is going to end up happening with Colorado is that while Harris could, go for those, more liberal voters in cities in Colorado, especially in Denver, she's going to struggle winning those suburban votes. And I think Harris is going to be someone who will struggle with suburban vote in this scenario. Trump is going to do somewhat better than that. I mean, I think that, actually, now that I'm thinking more about it, I think Harris could actually win here by likely margins, but I think it would be pretty close, and I think Trump could actually perform a lot better than a lot of people think he could here. So now going on to the state of Minnesota. Minnesota is a state that has been trending considerably more blue. A lot of the big social movements like BLM have, sparked from Minnesota, and I think a lot of the voters in the city are really trending Democrat. Now, there's another big thing to consider. The Republicans are really doing well in the rural parts of the state. They're, building coalitions, and I think that's something that's really good for them. However, this is a state that has a lot of different types of voters. This is not as much as like Michigan, Wisconsin, and Pennsylvania, where you have a lot of those, blue collar workers and Rust Belt workers. This has, shifted a little bit. This has become more of a big city and then rural area state. This is more of a farm state and then a city state. This is what I think. Like a lot of the areas, I think Minnesota itself is more part of this region of the country, the upper Midwest, than the actual Rust Belt. So I think it's something that's actually really interesting, and I think that come 2024, Kamala Harris might be able to build the right coalition here. Now, as far as the Republican lean states go, I really think that, Donald Trump has the possibility to flip a couple states back, and he has the possibility of holding some states. So I think down in the Sun Belt, we're going to see an exceptionally strong performance by the Republicans. I think that Kamala Harris is definitely not the candidate for the Sun Belt. I think that Kamala Harris herself, she might, do well in certain parts of the country, like in cities. She might do well with Democratic base. However, the most important part, and I think a lot of people fail to, take this into account, that the real people who win elections for these politicians are the independents. And Kamala Harris, I don't think she has that appeal. And I think to a certain level, just because of some of his policies, Donald Trump's policies, like his economic policies, and his general America First sentiment, really goes well with independents' economic views. Now, we have to think that these states are going to be full of a lot of independents, and these are really swing states. I think Trump can win these back, and I think the only thing that might hinder him are, his personality, and politically, I think that the big question and the big reason for Trump losing elections is you have Trump the policies and Trump the person. Trump the policies are pretty good. I think a lot of Americans really agree with them, but Trump the person rubs a lot of people the completely wrong way. So I think that's something that we have to analyze. And in these states like North Carolina, Arizona, and Georgia, these are states that have a lot of Republicans. These are states that, traditionally voted Republican. In the case of Georgia and Arizona, they flipped narrowly in 2020. I really think that was based on Biden's very good appeal amongst African-American voters, which, especially in Georgia. In Arizona, it was a mix of suburban voters in that coalition. Harris does not have that support, so I really do think Trump's going to end up winning in that region. And two districts I forgot to fill in: Maine's 2nd District and Nebraska's 2nd District. I think Nebraska's 2nd District is going to be more solidly as we move on, more Democratic. However, there's something that we have to acknowledge here. we really don't know because of redistricting how the districts in Nebraska are going to look like. If it stays a certain way, it's probably going to look like this. However, if it doesn't, I really think it's not going to stay like that. And as far as Maine's 2nd district goes, this is a very conservative district. I mean, Republicans have done very well here. The only race they've lost is the House race, and even that, it's a very conservative Democrat, and I think Kamala Harris really can't appeal to those voters. So up in Maine's 2nd district, I think we're looking at a electoral vote for Donald Trump. Now, for the last part of this video, we have our tilt states, the states that I really think are going to be the closest states in this election. These are states that I think are going to be less than 1.5%. So where do I think this is going to fall? I think that Wisconsin and Pennsylvania are going to be certainly for Trump. I think these are going to be states that are going to tilt towards Trump, and I think that Trump has good appeal here. He can win the areas that are necessary to win. He can win the suburbs of the big cities, and he could also win the more manufacturing towns. Same thing in Pennsylvania, and I think looking back at 2020 results, the one reason Biden won here is because he had a great appeal for the Midwest. He was able to win in Allentown and its suburbs. He was able to win in Pittsburgh and its suburbs, which is something that Donald Trump was able to do in 2016, and that's why he won. I think come 2024, if Kamala Harris is the candidate, I think there is no denying that Kamala Harris isn't a good candidate for the Midwest, and I think her inability, rather, to not appeal to those voters is something that is going to cost her the election in those states. And as you can see, Donald Trump has already reached 270 electoral votes needed to win the election. So going on to the last state, and this is the state I'm really unsure about, I'm going to end up saying that if this is the matchup, I think it's going to end up going for Donald Trump. You know, Kamala Harris really can't appeal to the voters in Grand Rapids and that general region of Michigan, and, you know, a lot of the more manufacturing towns. Again, we have to think back in 2020 and where the country is headed. Manufacturing towns, you know, those blue-collar towns, we really have to think that those areas of the country are more Republican than they used to be, and only with the right Democrats, they might flip. I think that's something that we really have to acknowledge, and I think if Kamala Harris is the nominee for 2024 for the Democratic Party, she's not going to be able to do that. If you look at the map of the results, it's pretty simple. Biden, compared to 2016, he won in those places because he was able to win the rural manufacturing towns. So this is where I think the election is headed if Donald Trump and Kamala Harris is the matchup. A 306 versus 232 matchup for this election. I think there's actually a very interesting scenario, 306, 232. It's the same electoral count that Hillary Clinton lost in 2016. And it's the same states. The only difference is that the congressional districts, if I'm correct, actually, the only difference is that Harris actually wins in Nebraska. So I think generally speaking, we're going to be looking at a very interesting race. It's the battle of the unpopulars in this race, and I think it's going to be a complete repeat of 2016. So guys, I hope you guys enjoyed the video. If so, please give it a huge thumbs up, like, subscribe, and turn on post notifications to be up to date with our latest content. Thanks and goodbye.